I remember the first time I heard someone say, "Your brain doesn't know the difference between real and imagined." I rolled my eyes. It sounded like another feel-good quote floating around social media, but then I started digging. And what I found flipped everything I believed about success and change. It turns out that sentence wasn't just motivational fluff, it was neuroscience. I used to think that transformation started with action, doing more, grinding harder, pushing through. But the deeper I looked into brain research, the more I realized what we imagine consistently has the power to rewire our brain just as much as what we actually experience. And that changed everything for me. Scientists call it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. But here's the twist. The brain doesn't only rewire based on real experiences. It responds powerfully to imagined ones too. That's right. When you visualize something vividly and repeatedly, your brain starts forming the same pathways as if you had actually lived it. And that's when I realized I had been underusing the most powerful tool I owned, my imagination. Think about this. An Olympic skier sits still in a chair, eyes closed, mentally running through an entire course. Every twist, every jump, every muscle movement. Her body reacts as if she were physically skiing. Her heartbeat rises. Her breathing adjusts. Her muscles twitch. Why? Because the brain is firing as though it's real. That's not magic, that's mental rehearsal. And we can use that same process, not to win gold medals necessarily, but to reshape our habits, our confidence, our goals. Visualization, when repeated intentionally, creates what I now call mental blueprints. They're not dreams. They're rehearsals for reality. At first I was skeptical. I started small. I pictured myself waking up early, focused, feeling energized. I did it every day, 100 times. It felt ridiculous at first, like I was lying to myself. But something shifted. I started waking up earlier, not by force, but because it felt natural. I had already seen it so many times in my head. That's when I got curious. What if I applied this to something bigger, like public speaking, something that used to terrify me? I began visualizing it every day, not just standing on the stage, but feeling calm, speaking clearly, connecting with the audience. The more I imagined it, the less foreign it felt, until one day it was just normal. And then the neuroscience made sense. Our brains are designed to prioritize what we repeat, especially with emotional charge. The more I saw myself succeed, in my mind, the more my body stopped resisting. It's like I had been rehearsing for the moment before it even happened. In today's world, we're constantly overwhelmed by noise. Social media floods our attention. News cycles hijack our focus. We scroll, click, consume, but rarely direct our mental energy with intention. Visualization gave me back that control. It became my quiet rebellion against a world built on distraction. Instead of letting the world feed my mind, I started feeding it with visions of the future I chose to build. And here's what's wild. The more I practiced visualizing the life I wanted, not once, not twice, but 100 times, the more I started noticing opportunities that aligned with it. I wasn't forcing anything. I was just tuned in, like changing the station on a radio. The world didn't change. My frequency did. I began to understand that visualization isn't just about seeing. It's about feeling. Emotions make the imagined experience real to the nervous system. That's why athletes who mentally train with emotion perform better. Their body already believes it. So I made it a daily ritual. 100 visualizations of who I'm becoming. I imagine the details, the sounds, the smells, the words I'll say, the way I'll feel. And every time, those neural pathways deepen. It's like walking the same trail in the forest until it becomes automatic. Is it always easy? No. Old beliefs push back. doubt creeps in. But here's the truth. Doubt is just another thought, and thoughts can be replaced. Repetition is how you do it, not with force, but with consistency. Now, whenever I want to create change, I don't start with a to-do list. I start with a vision. I close my eyes. I see it. I feel it. I do it 100 times if I have to, because that's how reality shifts from mind to matter. I never thought visualizing something 100 times would lead to anything. Honestly, it sounded excessive. Who does anything 100 times, other than Olympic athletes or maybe obsessive artists? But one day, after hitting a wall with my goals, I decided to try it. Not half-heartedly, I committed. And what happened after that still feels surreal. It started with something small. I was stuck in a job I didn't love, dreaming of switching careers, but terrified of actually doing it. I kept telling myself I wasn't qualified, or the timing wasn't right. But deep down, I knew the real problem. I didn't see myself as the kind of person who could pull it off. So I made a deal with myself. For the next 30 days, I would visualize the same thing, me in my ideal role, confident, thriving, fulfilled, 100 times. Every morning before work, every night before bed. I didn't worry about perfection, I just saw it, repeatedly. At first it felt like pretending. My brain pushed back, "You're not that person." But I stuck with it. I added layers to the visualization. What my desk looked like, how I talked to people, the emails I wrote, the kind of clothes I wore. I let it become rich, detailed, emotional. And slowly, something shifted. I started waking up differently. I walked into my office with a little more confidence, even though nothing outside had changed yet. I found myself applying to jobs without the old panic. I wasn't waiting for change anymore. I was rehearsing it. That's when I realized the 100 times technique isn't about magic. It's about building momentum. Each repetition was like dropping water onto a stone. One drop means nothing, but 100, that's how grooves are carved. My inner dialogue began to change. Instead of, "What if I'm not ready?" it became, "What if this is exactly who I'm meant to be?" That shift came from repetition, not reason. One day, while journaling, I wrote, "This is no longer something I'm trying to believe. It's something I've rehearsed so many times it feels familiar." And that's the key. When something feels familiar, it stops feeling scary. We avoid change, not because we lack ability, but because it feels unfamiliar. Visualization replaces that fear with something powerful: recognition. I started reading about how elite performers do this too. Athletes don't just train their bodies, they train their minds. Before the match, the race, the speech, they run it in their minds dozens, even hundreds of times. They build what scientists call procedural memory, so when the real moment arrives, their body just flows. That's what happened to me. The more I visualized success, the more I behaved like someone who deserved it. I spoke up more in meetings. I networked. I said yes to opportunities I once ignored, not because I was suddenly braver, but because my subconscious had rehearsed it. That's why this technique works. Repetition creates neural familiarity, and familiarity creates courage. You stop needing constant motivation because the action no longer feels foreign. And here's the best part: you don't need fancy tools. Just a few quiet minutes and a clear image. I used my phone alarm to remind me morning and night. I even made short audio recordings of myself describing the future I wanted, then listened to them like mantras. Some days I didn't feel like it, but I did it anyway. That consistency became a ritual, not out of fear, but because I began to enjoy who I was becoming. I also kept a small notebook. Each day I tracked what I visualized and any shifts I noticed. At first, the changes were subtle. A compliment from a coworker, feeling more focused, sleeping better, but over time, those dots connected. And then it happened. An email, an interview, a job offer that matched almost exactly what I had been seeing in my mind. People said I was lucky, but luck had very little to do with it. The truth is, when you see something clearly enough, often enough, the world begins to organize itself around that vision. You start filtering information differently, you act differently, and others respond. The 100 times technique is less about dreaming and more about training. It's not passive, it's practice, it's preparation. It's about showing up inside your vision so often that when the door finally opens, you recognize it. Now, when I talk to friends who feel stuck, I don't just give advice, I challenge them. Try this for 30 days. Pick one thing, visualize it 100 times, track it, feel it, watch what happens. Some roll their eyes like I used to, but the ones who try, they come back changed, because once you've seen the future enough times, it stops being a dream and starts becoming a memory you're catching up to. I used to think visualization was just for goal setting, something you do when planning a business, a dream home, or the next version of yourself. But that was before the world changed. Before the headlines got darker, before the noise became deafening. That's when I discovered something deeper. That visualization isn't just a tool for ambition. It's a refuge, a form of survival. We live in volatile times, economic instability, political unrest, climate anxiety, the rise of AI. It's easy to wake up overwhelmed. I know I did. For a while I stopped dreaming altogether. What was the point of envisioning a better future when reality seemed to be collapsing in real time? But it was in that chaos that I stumbled into something unexpected. I realized that the one thing I could still control entirely was my inner world. So I made a choice. Instead of letting the outside dictate my emotions, I decided to reclaim the inside. I began every morning by visualizing peace. Not abstract peace, but a specific version of my day unfolding with calm, clarity, and purpose. I imagined myself responding with patience, finding moments of joy, breathing before reacting. It wasn't about ignoring the world, it was about stabilizing my response to it. I didn't expect much, but something shifted. The panic I felt every time I scrolled through the news, it began to fade. Not because the problems disappeared, but because I stopped carrying them like a second skin. I was building emotional immunity. And it all started with repetition. What we repeat becomes what we believe, and what we believe becomes how we behave. The practice grew. I started visualizing not just peace, but possibility, that even in a fractured world I could find purpose. Even in economic uncertainty, I could create value. Even during global instability, I could lead with clarity. It was like creating a lighthouse in the storm. I still saw the waves, but I wasn't drowning in them. That's the deeper power of visualization. Not to escape reality, but to shape your relationship with it. I began noticing that on days I skipped my visual practice, I felt more reactive, more drained. But when I gave myself those 5 to 10 minutes of focused inner vision, the day unfolded differently. Not always easier, but definitely clearer. I started using visualization to prepare for hard conversations, stressful decisions, uncertain financial moments. I'd see myself, grounded, logical, open, and more often than not, I lived into that version. Neuroscience confirms this. The brain doesn't care whether you're imagining a peaceful outcome or experiencing it. The same neural circuits light up. That's why soldiers, athletes, and trauma survivors are now being taught visualization as a resilience tool. It rewires the nervous system. One morning, I visualized myself walking calmly through a protest downtown, not blind to the tension, but rooted in a quiet strength. That afternoon, it happened. I passed through a crowd that felt explosive, but instead of shrinking, I breathed and I walked. Exactly as I had imagined. That was the moment I knew. Visualization isn't luxury. It's leadership. It's inner certainty in a world addicted to chaos. And it's available to anyone, regardless of where they live or what they face. I've shared this with friends across continents. Some live in war zones, some face racial injustice, some struggle with economic collapse. And yet, every single one of them, after committing to this practice, reported the same thing: a shift, not always in circumstance, but in self. Because here's the truth: if you wait for the world to calm down before you allow yourself to feel safe, you'll be waiting forever. But if you create a sanctuary within, a place rehearsed and built by visualization, you can walk through fire and not burn. I still practice this every day. I imagine the world I want to help build, not naively, but with a grounded sense of responsibility. I see a future of compassion-led innovation, of equity, of connection. I let that image guide my choices. I don't just dream anymore. I design my inner world over and over until the outer starts reflecting it. This isn't spiritual bypassing, it's strategic embodiment, because vision without clarity is just fantasy. But vision with repetition? That's how new realities begin. For most of my life, I thought the world worked in one direction, that what happened outside shaped how I felt inside. A job promotion would make me feel confident. A breakup would make me feel broken. A win, a loss, a reaction, each one directing my inner state like strings on a puppet. But I was wrong, completely wrong. The truth, the world reflects who I'm being, not just what I'm doing. It mirrors my beliefs, my energy, my expectations. And once I realized that, I stopped chasing validation. I started transmitting alignment. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and sense the tension, even before anyone says a word? That's not intuition. That's vibration. People pick up on the frequencies we carry. We all do it all the time, whether we realize it or not. And just like a radio, we only receive what we're tuned into. That's when I began experimenting with a different approach. Instead of waiting for people to treat me with respect, I started seeing myself as someone who commanded it. Not arrogantly, but authentically. I visualized it, felt it, repeated it 100 times if I had to, and the world responded. I wasn't just pretending. I was embodying a version of myself I had rehearsed so many times it became natural. That's the power of repetition. When you consistently transmit a frequency of confidence, peace, or purpose, your environment begins to mirror it back. I call this the mirror effect. It's not about control. It's about coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions are in alignment, the world around you begins to reflect that inner clarity. I've seen it over and over. The moment I shift my internal story, from "I hope this works" to "this is who I am," opportunities appear. Conversations shift, people respond differently. Not because the world changed overnight, but because I did. Think of it like walking through a forest. If you expect danger behind every tree, your body will tense, your eyes will narrow, and you'll miss the beauty around you. But if you walk expecting connection, your posture opens, your energy softens, and the forest seems to respond. That's not coincidence. That's quantum psychology. What we expect, we invite. What we radiate, we attract. I started paying attention to the way I spoke about myself. Every time I said, "I'm just not good with money," or "I'm too anxious to lead," I was reinforcing an identity I didn't want. So I flipped the script. I began speaking in alignment with the person I was becoming, even before the evidence showed up. That wasn't lying. That was planting. And with every visualization, every repeated affirmation, I was watering that new identity until it started to bloom in the world around me. Here's what most people get wrong. They try to act confident without actually feeling it first. But the mirror doesn't respond to what we fake. It responds to what we believe. So I worked on belief, quietly, repeatedly. I visualized walking into meetings fully present. I saw myself listening without fear. I imagined people nodding, responding, opening up, and soon they did. This wasn't about manifesting from thin air. It was about broadcasting a clearer frequency, one that matched what I wanted instead of what I feared. Sometimes the response was subtle, a stranger smiling, a client saying yes, an idea sparking at the right time. Other times, it felt seismic, new, collaborations, new roles, new outcomes. But no matter the scale, the message was the same. The world reflects what I bring to it. Not perfectly, not instantly, but inevitably. Now, whenever I feel like the world is pushing against me, I pause. I ask, what am I projecting? Not to blame myself, but to reclaim my power. Because here's what I've learned: you can't fake alignment, but you can practice it. And the more you practice, the more the world stops resisting and starts responding. The mirror effect isn't mystical, it's mechanical. Repetition trains your nervous system. Clarity rewires your filters. Emotion anchors the signal. And the signal you send is always the invitation you extend. If you want the world to reflect kindness, be it. If you want abundance, expect it. If you want connection, radiate it. And if doubt creeps in, repeat your vision until it becomes louder than your fear. I still visualize daily, not because I'm trying to bend reality, but because I'm tuning myself to receive what I've already declared true. The mirror doesn't lie, it simply reflects. And what it reflects is you. There's a moment in every journey when you stop chasing and start becoming. You feel it quietly, not as a sudden shift, but as a slow, steady knowing. This isn't a dream anymore. This is who I am now. When I first started using visualization, I was hoping for change, wishing for it. I repeated images in my mind, wrote affirmations, tracked my progress, like someone trying to prove that transformation was possible. But somewhere between repetition 50 and 100, something unexpected happened. I no longer needed to convince myself. I believed it, and that's when everything started to flow. Not because the world became easier, but because I did. I had rehearsed the future so many times that living it felt natural. The actions that once felt intimidating now felt intuitive. I stopped asking what if and started acting as if. That's the real evolution, from dreamer to creator. We all start with vision, with hope, with the whisper of something more. But to cross the bridge from intention to reality, we need consistency. Not perfection, not intensity, just repetition done with presence. I built a habit around it. 5 minutes every morning, 5 minutes every night. I'd close my eyes and step into the version of me I was becoming. I didn't rush. I didn't force. I just repeated, scene by scene, emotion by emotion, until it sank in. And that simple practice changed how I showed up. People around me noticed. You seem more grounded. You're glowing lately. What changed? It was nothing external, no major life shift, just a different vibration I was bringing into every room, a coherence between my inner and outer worlds. That's the power of sustained visualization. You start to embody the future rather than just imagining it. Of course, old doubts still surfaced from time to time. Who am I to think I can have this? What if this is all a fluke? But I had rehearsed answers to those too. In my mind, I had faced those shadows and walked through them 100 times. So when they showed up in real life, I didn't run. I responded. Visualization isn't about avoiding challenges. It's about preparing for them, about designing responses before the chaos comes. That's why it's so powerful. Now I keep a visual journal, not just of what I want, but who I'm becoming. I sketch images, write scenes, track intuitive nudges. I treat it like a sacred document, not a wish list, but a declaration. And every entry reinforces one truth. I am not waiting for the future. I am creating it. One of the most profound realizations I've had through this practice is that identity precedes achievement. You don't succeed and then feel worthy. You feel worthy And then success becomes a natural byproduct. That's what visualization does. It aligns you with your identity before the world catches up. I used to look at people who seemed effortlessly confident and wonder what their secret was. Now I know it wasn't about luck. It was about inner congruence. They weren't faking anything. They were living what they had already decided to believe about themselves. And that's available to all of us. Not someday, today. As I wrap up this journey with you, I want to leave you with something simple but powerful. You don't need to wait for proof. You can become your future now, not by forcing outcomes, but by repeating the vision, feeling the emotion, living the practice. So start today, set a timer, find a quiet space, close your eyes, and step into the version of you that already has what you're dreaming about. Do it again tomorrow, and again after that, one mental rehearsal at a time. Because the moment you stop seeing your dream as a distant fantasy and start treating it as a memory waiting to manifest, that's when the world shifts. You are not a seeker anymore. You are a creator, and your future, it's not out there somewhere. It's waiting in here for you to step into it. Thank you for walking this path with me. If this spoke to something inside you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to remember who they truly are. This is just the beginning.